All right, we are going to talk about self-belief because I feel like this is one of those really powerful pieces. And if we go to, I know we've been kind of going down our pyramid, so I will like show our pyramid. If you remember, we talked about self-control, self-discipline, and these are a little bit more like tangible, easy to see. And as we get higher into the pyramid, these become a little bit more abstract. You can't just see self-belief. You just can't always see self-confidence. In some ways you can, but sometimes we can just perceive someone as confident without really knowing what's going on in their world. So self-belief, right, is this big piece. So today we're going to talk a little bit through why we want to do, why self-belief is so important, but kind of this mix of like self-doubt, self-sabotage, and self-belief, and how we can just continue to build more of it as we continue to push and stretch ourselves with our goals, with our pushing that ceiling of like what we think is possible. So let's get our working definition just so we have it. Self-belief is the trust you have in your own abilities, your own decisions, and the capacity to actually achieve those goals, right? So it takes this ultimate self-trust that you're going to do the work, right? You can do it, and you have no doubt that you won't be able, like, sorry, you have no doubt that it's going to happen. It's inevitable, right? So it's also this internal piece where you're handling challenges, you're solving problems, you're using strategies and tools to face obstacles head on, like almost like seeking the obstacle versus like shying away, because obstacles, setbacks, things are going to happen in your journey. And it's one of those pieces that sometimes we can allow these things to mean things and how we decide to move forward through it. So we know that now we have our working definition. And so I think there's some big questions around this, right? That I've had clients ask. And one of it is like, why is this so important, right? Why would it be important to have self belief? Well, if we are thinking about self belief, it is the foundation of all we do. Every choice, every habit, every risk we take is embedded into self belief, right? Without it, even your best, very most beautiful plan or even an opportunity can get sabotaged easily because your beliefs are going to drive what you do, right? Your beliefs drive your behavior. And that can mean sometimes we think of it as like our actions, but it can also be inaction, right? Sometimes an action is inaction, not doing anything or stopping doing something because we're scared. And so this is so incredibly important because without self belief, we are going to automatically, and we're going to talk more about the brain here, because it's so funny how our brains work, and understanding it helps why we do some of the things we do, right? But it's also really important because if you don't believe you can actually achieve your goal, you won't take action towards it. You will continue to kind of stay in that comfy zone because it's known, you can do it. You believe you can do that thing. And taking a step outside of it can feel challenging. So if you don't believe you're going to do it, sometimes you won't take that consistent action. Oh my gosh, this is real. Self-doubt, right? Always will lead to hesitation, avoidance, giving up too early, and even just stepping back to say, like, I don't think this is going to be something I can do. And I'm just going to settle for something that I know I can really do. That is something we'll talk a little bit more about self-doubt, but something I want you to remember is every single person experiences self-doubt. Even the more you grow and expand and learn and get better and grow, self-doubt will still creep in. It's just how we start to handle that self-doubt that really matters. You are going without, like, why is self important? Like, why is self-belief so important? You rise or fall to the level of your identity. So if you identify as this and your goal is this, you're going to stay here. That's why we talk a lot about that identity shift and shifting who you are and acting kind of to that next level self. It's so incredibly important. And your subconscious brain, right? That's your working brain that's just working without you having to think. It's on autopilot. So your autopilot brain is constantly looking to confirm what you already believe. So if you always say to yourself, right, I always fall off track, or man, I can never feel my glutes in a hip thrust, or I can never stay on track on the weekends, or I just really bad at X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is that you are saying or thinking to yourself, your brain is going to constantly look for proof to solidify that. So it's going to be like, yes, we have all of this data. Open up the Rolodex. Here we go. That is real. Your brain is always going to look for that. And then, of course, self-belief shifts your identity from I'm trying to I'm someone who does this, like I do, versus I try. Because to me, I'm very big about words. And to me, when somebody says, I'm going to try, or I hope, or I want, those are all like iffy language, right? It's like we're sticking our toe into that swimming pool. You've seen people like where they're like, I'm going to feel it out and I'm going to just kind of reach my toe in, but my body is literally like leaning away from the pool like this. They're like literally saying no, right? They're already saying, like, I'm not going to get into that pool. It's that piece that it's like, we're not trying even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect action, we're still doing, right? We're still moving forward and making progress. So shifting your identity of like, I'm someone who does it, even if it's not beautiful, even if it's not perfect, is going to shift your identity and even belief in self too. Um, Without it, you are also going to really seek praise, approval, from other people to really be like, I am enough. Because it's like you almost don't trust yourself enough to do it on your own without anything. And that creates burnout and mass self-comparison. And I know we've talked about self-comparison in other trainings. This is where we start to kind of seek outside of ourselves and look of like what we're doing wrong, right? What we're doing wrong. Self-belief is just a beautiful internal grounding. You learn to validate who you are and yourself. You start to see your wins stack up. You start to see what you do and how it makes you feel and who that new shift in your identity is. It does help you, like self-belief helps you bounce back faster when you do have setbacks. And it's something where you start interpreting any type of feedback where you might fail as as an opportunity to learn versus this like, oh, I'm just I can't do it, or like my sense of worth is now off. It's like, no, this is just gets the struggle gets to be a part of our journey. And I'm gonna fail. Like every single one of us fails. I fail, but it's also like, how do I grow and learn from it? Self-belief. And obviously, we are all lots of us ladies here, so many different areas in our lives and personalities and goals and everything like that. But you need self-belief for literally any any role you play in your life, mom, entrepreneur, anything you do at work, right? What your career is, an athlete, building a meaningful life. We need self-belief. I don't care what you're doing. We all need it. And that is why, like, this is so incredibly important. And it's one of my favorite topics to talk about because without self-belief, we're leaving a lot on the table and we're allowing ourselves to kind of settle for mediocre when there's so much like I if you've heard me talk before, we create our own ceilings and we decide sometimes this, oh, I got in here, this is good enough. And it's like, well, there's so like I think of it like a skyscraper, right? We busted through ceiling 1 and 2 and 3 and we're like, oh, I'll just stay on the third level when there's 700 levels that we could just go up. It's like, why stop? um I stopped. Relentless pursuit of betterment, right? But sometimes people will ask me this: why does it seem like some people just have way more self-belief and some people have way less self-belief? self-belief is always created, right? It is shaped by your life, your experiences, how you have taken and interpreted success and failure over the years. The feedback you've gotten from others throughout your life could be parents, friends, peers, people at work, right? The people in your circle. You're getting constant feedback from people. Your mindset, challenges you faced, overcoming those challenges, and the standards and the core values that you use to guide your life. This is where self belief is really created. And if you've struggled with self belief, there's probably things we could look at throughout your life that may have put that into place. And it might be in certain areas, right? You might feel like an absolute self belief and powerhouse at work. And then sometimes with your fitness journey, you might feel a little bit more stuck. Or maybe you feel opposite in some other areas of your life, right? Self belief is created. And like I said this earlier, we cannot see self-belief, right? You can even see ladies on social media and you're on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all the things, and you're watching these ladies and you're like, oh, she's just so confident, she just has it all together, she just, we could go down the list, right? She just believes in herself so much. And there's no way of looking at that person and just knowing that they have self-belief. It might feel like they do because of what they show you, but you're not getting to see inside of the world. And something I'm going to say probably 1,000 times, but I want it to be so ingrained. Don't you love it? Is every single person has self-doubt. Every single person. And it's just how people choose to pivot through self-doubt is how we live and learn through it, and how they allow it to either use it to propel them forward or to totally stop them. So self-belief, even though you might see people and you think like they've got it all together, they just have you have no idea. And the other things that we've talked about, like I said earlier, we can see them. Self-belief is not there. You're not going to be able to see it. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. So we know, I'm sure you know, can you change or strengthen your self-belief? Of course, right? We're not fixed. Your brain is honestly in this constant state of learning and rewiring and growing. What you think, say, and do is how it's based on. So what you repetitively do, what you repetitively think, and what you repetitively say to yourself reinforces the belief in self. So again, if you're sitting there going, oh, I'm just not doing so good. Oh, I'm not making any progress. Oh, I'm not, right? Guess what your brain's going to continue to do? It's going to create these circuits that like loop, loop, loop. And it keeps, like I said, opens up that Rolodex of finding more and more evidence to back up that thought and that belief. So this is why it's so important to really step back, and as we're thinking things and saying things, being so aware of what we think, say, and do, and how that's truly impacting how we see ourselves, how we believe in ourselves, and then ultimately how we are showing up in our actions. And so, something we'll talk about later, I keep saying that, but something we'll talk about later is change the thought, change your pathway, right? So if we change the thought, it's not going to go on that little circuit and loop. We change the pathway and we start to change how you think about yourself. So you don't wait for belief to happen. You act your way to self-belief, right? You have to show up and start to do before you may even believe. And that might sound harder than it is, but I promise we'll learn how. So your prefrontal cortex, we're going to talk about 3 different parts of your brain. And the reason we're going to talk about each part of the brain is because we could go more. I just don't think you guys probably want to hear Sierra talk about the brain and nerd out for oodles of time, because we could. But these parts of your brain are so incredibly important, and they're probably some of the biggest players. So that's why I chose these 3. But the prefrontal cortex, we have heard of her before, right? She is your CEO of self-belief, right? She is like in charge. So she is self-aware. She is in self-regulation mode. She's decision making, future planning. She regulates your thoughts, your emotions, your abilities. And she's always in those beliefs about yourself. So very like matter of fact. This is what I believe. This is what I think. And it's the most why this part of your brain matters so much, right? Is your logical thinking. If you remember like flip cap, this is your logical brain. Your prefrontal cortex is more logical. As we let that get off when we get stressed and in our emotions, that's where we start leaning into more of fear and anger and stress and overwhelm and all the bad, usually it's bad emotions. I'm not saying all bad emotions, but usually that's where we seem to see like self-doubt arise. But as we're thinking about that prefrontal cortex, it matters because it can recall information for you of like, I've failed before, but I also know I can try again, right? I know I am able to really push myself to that next level. It also creates the stories that and holds the stories that like you are who you are, and this is what we're capable of. So it's like very matter of fact, right? It plays that part. Now, the cool part is how does the CEO of our brain, how does it help us increase our self-belief? So it helps us plan future actions. Beautiful, right? It helps us regulate our emotions. It gives us the ability to have self-control, and it helps us process through mistakes, through setbacks, and it allows us to see a potential like opportunity and possibility for us in the future. It's like, I could do that. And with this plan, we can make that happen. Gorgeous, right? So, how can it actually stop us from moving forward? Sometimes we can create the most unrealistic plans, right? It's beautiful on paper, right? Optimal, gorgeous. But now it's so far off from what we're able to do that it's like, this isn't realistic, and immediately starts viewing things as mistakes and failures. So it's like this mistake is an automatic failure versus like, okay, I know I'm going to have failures and I have this opportunity to learn. No, the CEO is going to be like, fact. And if we've never done something, especially like something in going on in our life, it will look to other people to like start comparing to. So that is the CEO. And it's really important that we realize like these parts of our brains are operating to help us, but in some ways they can help, in some ways they can stop. So understanding when, hey, realizing if we have planned an unrealistic plan, it doesn't mean that we can't ever do that plan. It might be like we need to tweak that plan for where we are now and build up to it, right? Coming up with a more realistic plan. So sometimes if we're noticing like my plan's not working, I'm failing, all of those things, those could be like just moments where it's like, hey, there's something here. Now, the next one is your amygdala. I'm sure everybody has heard of your amygdala. It is the head of security, right? It is your protector. And we absolutely need your amygdala because it is there for survival, right? Your brain is wired for survival, not success. But your amygdala is here to like keep you on high alert. It's to keep you safe. So scanning for danger, right? It's reacting quickly to stress, fear, threats, uncertainty. It's giving you fight, flight, freeze, right? And there's also fawn, but those are kind of the big ones, especially that we seem to do a lot is fight or flight mode, freeze. It does not care. Your amygdala does not care about you growing. It cares about you surviving. And if it sees something as a threat, it will act. Your emotions will go heightened. You will notice like a shift. Um, Emotional processing, right? This is emotions, right? Prefrontal cortex flipped up, and we're in our fear and stress, especially, is where the amygdala thrives, right? Because it's there to keep you alive. It influences how we see threats and setbacks. So, again, how we believe and perceive things also dictates how much that amygdala turns on. How can it increase? You're like, how would this ever increase? Your self-belief. Well, actually, it can help. So it's going to warn us proactively to plan for challenges, right? So it's like, ooh, there's a potential threat coming down my line. I need to plan. I need to be proactive so I can set myself up for success. It can acknowledge when we have fear around something so that we can, one, talk to your coach about it. We can prepare through it because those are warning flags that it's probably, even if it seems like, oh, that should be simple, it can feel uncertain because we've never done it before. And your immediately brain can be like, red flag, warning, no, no, no. When really it's like, no, I want to do this. I want to do this. So it can give you this opportunity to acknowledge that fear and prepare for it and have someone help plan and think through these things with you. Um, it also is really helpful for us to know what we do have control over and what we don't, because we can easily get stuck into like that I don't have control. I don't have control. And it's like we always have control. It's just sometimes we want to control pieces that are absolutely gone. We can't. Um, Now, how can it stop us? We can probably already foresee like, okay, there's lots of reasons this could stop us. It's going to start taking over and running the show. Um, Especially when a threat or fear or you're feeling like failure, those pieces, it easily will put self-sabotage, right? Self-doubt, self-sabotage in your way to keep you safe. That's its goal, right? It is the head of security. It is not here to do any other job but to keep you alive and keep you safe. So it to keep you safe, even from something as big as a goal that you want, it will keep you stuck in a loop that you don't want to be in. That's why I call like the graveyard of your dreams the comfort zone, because it's like, I don't want to be here. I want to be over here doing this, but I feel safe here. This is where I feel safe. So, I know I call it the graveyard of your dreams, but you can even think of it as like, this is my safety net. This is where my body feels certain. This is where my body feels safe. And even though it's like sometimes we're doing these things to push and grow ourselves, it will it will alert your amygdala to be like, no, no, stay in the cozy zone. Um, you will talk yourself out of it. You'll delay action. You'll avoid, avoid, avoid. You'll procrastinate. You'll play small. When you know you can push, you're like, oh no, I'll just stay here. I think that's probably best, right? It's waiting for somebody to give you permission to do something versus you giving, you're like, no, I'm full control over me. I will do it. You try to control everything. Even the uncontrollables, right? You're like, oh, I can't control this, and I'm going to try to think about how I can control it when you know deep down there's nothing you can do. Like I said, talk yourself out of it. And then also, one that I see a lot is people avoiding their emotions, which builds and builds and builds. And I call it like the cloud. Like if we're avoiding our emotions, clouds, if we feel them, if we do them, they will drift, right? They will come over you. They will pass on through. But if you don't, that cloud becomes this like dark dementor cloud, and it is like consuming your entire being. And it makes stress, fear, uncertainty, overwhelm higher and higher and higher. And then, of course, guess what happens? Our emotions lead to certain actions, which then results in behaviors that we don't want. So your amygdala can be actually a really useful part of your brain to kind of like notice that there are uncertainty, notice there are challenges. And guess what? There's going to be challenges in your journey, especially when you are pushing yourself to a new level, or you're like, you know what, Sierra, I want, or like Ashley or Shelby, or, I want to I want this. This is what I want. And it's like, awesome. There's going to be some levels of uncertainty to get there, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. We just have to take each challenge and each opportunity to do it. Um, so we've got our CEO, prefrontal cortex, we've got our amygdala, head of security, and now we've got our hippocampus, which is your memory keeper. So, sorry. This stores long-term memories, right? Our brain thrives on big emotions. So you probably remember big emotions the most. Those are the memories you probably hold near and dear. So think best memories ever, right? Your kids being born, the day you got that job you wanted, or the day you got married, or the day you didn't, you got divorced, maybe. It could be like just you had this amazing time out with friends or a trip or whatever. Big, happy emotions we remember. and not just happy, like all the like love, like big, big emotions are the pieces that like we cling to. And on the opposite end, big emotions negatively, right? Because those also remind us to stay safe, right? I don't want to touch the stove again because I burned myself and ouch. No, thank you. I'm going to remember that so I don't keep putting my hand on hot things, right? Um, so it remembers big emotions and autobiographical ones that you just like big parts of your life that you're like, you're proud of. Like I said, powerful, big emotions. It stores these long-term memories. So it also will link your past to your present. So your memories that are coming in, it's kind of seeing like, oh, this is what happened. This is where we are, and it's merging and it's linking them and combining. It helps you recall evidence of what you have done and you haven't done, right? So, for example, if you've had past experiences, maybe with trainers, maybe even with fat loss, maybe with even like building muscle, and it's been a negative experience, you're going to bring that to the table, right? You're going to bring that memory because it's there again, working with these other parts of your brain to keep you safe, to protect you, to also like think through these actions, right? I did this before. This worked for me before. I did keto before. It worked. But then we step back and you're like, but I couldn't keep to keto. So did it really work? Right? We could go on I'm not going to go down rabbit hole. Stay. Um, stay focused. Um, if your hippocampus keeps recalling the moments of failure, rejection, shame, criticism, guess what? It's going to reinforce your self-doubt, right? It makes sense. I'm constantly putting in my brain, let's look for this. Let's look for this. You're telling your brain, even subconsciously, look for this. I did bad. I always do bad. Do. Or if so, we don't want that. We don't want to bring self-doubt to the table. But if you can train your brain to recall beautiful wins, growth moments, challenges you've overcome, guess what? Your brain will start looking and supplying evidence for self-belief. So your brain is such a powerhouse. I mean this because it works together to allow us to choose. We actually have a choice in how we train our brain, and we can rewire our brain to either we can just focus on self-doubt or we can start training it to see the wins, the beautiful growth and the challenges that we have done. And it doesn't even have to be related to what you're doing. Like it doesn't have to be a challenge that you've done in a fat loss phase. It could be a challenge that you've done in other areas of your life because you now have evidence. Hey, I did this hard thing. And that means I can do this other hard thing, even if they're not related. How cool is that? Um, so how can it increase your self-belief? It can recall on past accomplishments and memories that can power you through, right? Which is super powerful. Like I said, it doesn't have to be related to what you're doing. It's just knowing like every single one of us has overcome big challenges in our life. They might be so different, right? Person to person, but it's like example. I will give an example of myself. I overcame binge eating. That was a huge, massive challenge. And so, you know what was cool? I got to bring that experience to the challenge of learning to pose and going through prep. And I knew if I can do this, I can do this. I'm going to have to learn a lot. I'm going to have to struggle, but I've struggled before. I've done it before. I can do it again. It can also provide those moments just like not just pretty memories, but examples. And as we continue to look for more examples, it'll keep bringing up more and more examples of hardships and challenges we've overcome and accomplishments we've done. So powerful, but it can, like I said before, if we've had these past failures or past experiences where things didn't work out well, it can almost set us back as like, ooh, I didn't accomplish here, right? Like instead of seeing a challenge we've overcome, it's like, ooh, this has always been a struggle. I don't know, right? Like I'm bringing this up, or it can allow us to think that because it's happened before, that it's going to just continue to happen. Like, well, I just can't ever, for example, Sierra, old Sierra, I was really good at losing weight. I sucked at maintaining. Best way to put it. I was so good at dieting. I could always, always, always lose the weight. I never could figure out how to maintain, right? The real problem was that. And if you look back, I could have used that as like, well, I guess that's just who I am, right? This is the predictive outcome. So if I diet next time, I'll probably just gain the weight back. So why bother? No, no, no. So it can stop us if we look at it that way. Now, I want us to kind of dig in a little bit. Sorry, I know this is a little beefy, but I think they all play together. I could just sit in self-belief, but I feel like I had to like slightly touch on self-doubt and self-sabotage because your self-doubt is the thought, right? Your self-doubt is the thing that we think and we just have decided it's true. So the self-sabotage is what we actually do. It's the actions we take or don't take, right? It's not just one or the other. So self-doubt definition, lack of confidence in yourself. That voice, Patricia, who questions your worth, who questions you, who might even be like, are you really enough? Can you really do this? Like it's that voice. And especially when you're doing something new, something challenging, something to the next, you're taking self to the next level, you're going to have self-doubt. I'm going to say that 1,000 times because it is a normal human experience and emotion. And without self-doubt, that self-doubt is there to kind of keep you safe, right? It's there for a reason. We don't love it because it doesn't feel good, but how it shows up, right? You're second guessing yourself. You feel failure and not just failure. A lot of times people get so cozy with failure, they really fear success, right? They don't know. They're like, I don't know who that person is. I don't know what like that woman looks like down the road because I've never been her. Uncertainty, right? Alarm bells go off. Uncertainty, fear, amygdala, right? Head of security is just ready to like protect. That fear of success can be very real. People are like, no, I don't fear success. I want success. We all do. But it doesn't mean that we aren't afraid of what that means. What changes might I have to make? Who does that mean I step into? Will that change my relationships with people, becoming more of who I want to be? Which is real. Like, and that goes back to like shrinking yourself, right? Um, or shrinking your goals to feel safe, to feel seen by other people, or to appease other people. And then of course, comparing yourself to other people, which I think pops up a lot. Especially when we're in our like lack of confidence, we start looking and comparing almost as like a protective measure against us. And again, especially if you're looking on social media, you just don't know that person. You don't know how long it's taken. You don't know the struggles. You don't know the highlight reel that you're only seeing. You don't get to see the whole picture. And then, of course, oh, sorry, it's always going to be rooted in your past, right? Past experiences, your fears and unchallenged beliefs about who you are. You're going to come to the table, every single one of us, with beliefs like, this is who I am. This is what I'm capable of. And if we just decide that's true, because we actually get a choice, we don't have, just because a thought pops in your brain doesn't mean it's true. It just means our brain thought of it. We decide if that's true, right? Our beliefs, what we bring. And if we don't ever challenge those beliefs, especially beliefs that could be potentially holding you back, those are going to constantly bring up self-doubt. Now, self-sabotage is the behavior, right? The unconscious behaviors and sometimes conscious behaviors. It's a little bit of both that block your success, right? Your path to progress and moving forward, it's driven by fear, not enoughness, not being worthy or not feeling worthy. And then also that, like, I don't know if I can do this. This is really uncomfortable. I'm struggling. And sometimes we just don't love that uncomfortable feeling of struggle. But it shows up with like procrastinating what you're going to do. over committing and under delivering, right? Where you're like, oh, yes, yes, yes. And then you're like, no, no, no. And you're almost like backpedaling, right? Quitting right as you're like at the breaking point. I see this a lot in journeys where they try to quit. And no coach here will let you quit. Will try to quit before you've actually built the momentum. And then choosing the comfort and growth, kind of staying in that safety zone over and over and over, even though it's like, I don't want to be here. Here is not good. I want to be here. I want to grow. So it's also wired old patterns, survival mode, amygdala, up up and firing, and it's stories that we have either been told by other people, stories we have found and told ourselves, and stories that maybe we've gotten from other people, or we think other people think about us, or they maybe have told us, but we do that to feel safe, to know like this is acceptable, this isn't. So self-doubt, I think I said this already, but self-doubt is the thought, right? And that's okay to have self-doubt. I'm gonna repeat that 1,000 times. It's okay if you doubt yourself. And if you're not doubting yourself, my bet is you're probably not growing. You might be in a place where you're okay and you feel good, but there could be this place where you're like, I've been thinking about this goal, but maybe even avoiding it. Like I've been thinking about this, but I'm okay here, right? I'm okay here. Like I'm good. But self-doubt is always the thought. It's just a thought. It is just a thought. Self-sabotage is your actual action that you follow through or don't follow through with. One fuels the other, right? Unless we do something, we can just stay stuck in our own loop where you'll hear yourself be like, I know what I need to do. I don't know why I keep doing this, right? I know what I need to do, but self-doubt is okay. I want self-doubt is okay. It's going to happen. And it should be something that you notice it and be like, oh, hello. Interesting, right? Get curious. Don't get judgy. Get curious. Interesting. There's something here. There's something more here. And so with this, like a lot of people be like, well, why do I get stuck in my own loop, right? Why do I get stuck in my own situation? Well, your brain is not wired for safety. It's wired for survival. It is wired, oh, sorry, I think I said it's not wired for safety. Yes, it is. Success. It's not wired to like stretch and grow in some ways. It is there to like in its most primitive sense, our brain was made to keep you alive, to keep you safe. And so, anytime there is fear, risk of failure, perceived risk, big emotions at play, vulnerability, failure, change, it signals in your brain danger, 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 right? Hello. And then it can lead to fight or flight. It can also lead to freeze responses. And even when we always think it's like something physical, but our thoughts, like it goes back to thoughts, words, what you say to yourself and what you think. Those two things are always in your brain is putting it on a loop. And so it's like it can sense like that fear when you're like, oh, what if I fail again? What if this doesn't work? What if, right? We love the what if, the hypothetical what ifs, right? But comfort equals survival. It is a big risk to your brain to change. Your brain does not like to change. And the cool part is your brain does change and it's so good at changing, but it doesn't like change because your brain likes to be as efficient as possible. It likes predictability. Like I said, it likes to know what we're doing. And once I always like to think of the brain on paths. Like I want you to think about a bicycle and going down a dirt road, right? Or like not a dirt road, but like you have this grassy field and over time you've created this path in your brain and you've ridden down this path over and over and over again. And over time, it's just created this lovely, deep, ingrained rut. And it's, just you can easily just put your bike in it and you just fly down. No grass in your way, nothing. It's so smooth. You can just go super fast, speedy down this path because you've created it and you've ridden it over and over and over again. That is habits, behaviors, things that you've done time and time again. It's just your brain's like, this is so easy. We love it. It's why people will be like, oh, I'm watching Netflix, right? And then it just starts another episode and they just like, okay, it's easy to stay on what you're already doing versus changing, right? It's a lot easier to watch another episode than to get up and wash the dishes or go to bed, even. As simple as like going to bed. It's like, it sounds so simple, but your brain likes to stay on what it's already doing. So if you think about that grassy field again, to create a new path, like, right, now we're going into a grassy path. There's grass, it's going to hit us in the face. There's no smooth path. We might just be all over. Like we might just be like this instead of just and it sees that as a risk. It sees that as like not, it's not a ingrained path. So we have to actively choose that over and over and over again. And so your prefrontal cortex, which is your logical brain, will often get overridden by the subconscious, by the fear, by the uncertainty. And even though, like, especially big emotions, think, when do most of our worst things happen? End of the day, right? Because we talked about this last time, willpower, tired, we're exhausted, we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we've had a day. That's where things tend to like fall apart, right? Or fall apart. But this is where our emotions will like to kick in, right? We are emotional beings. I know people like to think we're logical. No, we are emotional beings with a logical brain. It takes more energy to change, right? Which is why change can feel challenging. But the cool part is your brain, there is something called neuroplasticity, and it allows us that we can change, we can rewire, we can create these new identities, new patterns, new behaviors. It just requires getting off of that path, right? That path I was talking about. It's like we have to allow ourselves to get off of this path and to create that new path in our brain. But that's the coolest part. Our brain is so capable of rewiring, making new thoughts, making new patterns and changes. We just have to keep the consistency and the repetition alive. Um, and it is expensive for our brain to change, right? So you will get resistance. You will have Patricia popping up. You will have these moments where it's like, I'm avoiding, I'm distracting, I'm procrastinating, because your brain is going to resist it. And so I share this because sometimes it can feel like, why, when I want something so bad, you can want something so bad, but your brain has this wiring. So if we understand this, then we can do something about it, right? And the cool part is, and the cool part is, let me see if I can get it up because I didn't click it this time. Um, I'm going to see if I can share my little toolkit. Yes, there we go. So what I wanted us to do is have the opportunity to get a chance to practice self-belief in ways that we can actually have tangible action, right? Now, first and foremost, I'm going to say this 1,000 times. Talk to your coach about any of these because your coach is going to be able to help because you're going to be in your emotional brain a lot more. That's okay. Guess what? Us coaches, we get to be in our prefrontal cortex all the time, which helps so much, right? Because we can be planning, we can be regulating the emotions, we can be the ones problem solving and making a plan and helping you problem solve through. And even when it comes to your thoughts and beliefs about what you can do on your journey or where you have these big, like I like to call them these delusional goals that people are like, what? You think so, Sierra? And I'm like, heck yes, let's go. It's like, why not? The self-belief pieces in this can help. Now, you do not, for the record, you do not need to print this out, but it could be something that you save, you keep on your desktop and use like just a journal. Like I know this could take a lot of ink. But if you want to print it out, amazing. But I say that just because you could absolutely even write these in on a journal and just journal it out. I do this all the time. So first step, so I'm going to kind of talk through some steps, is I know we've talked a lot about goals, right? But this is a goal where you notice self-doubt creeping in, right? Because you might be like, okay, my goal is to grow my glutes. My goal is to step on stage and win my pro card. My goal is to get better at XYZ. My goal is this, but there's self-doubt surrounding this goal. You're like imposter syndrome. Your brain's like, I don't, fear, amygdala, right? Warning signals. Let's just stay over here. Like, I think we're better just here, right? I think we start to justify it. Pick a goal there. Okay. Pick one surrounding that. And then establish what you have control over and what you do not have control over, right? So this, I love a good T chart. There's two in here. And you could do more, but I love a good control, not control T chart, just like this, because it can allow you to step back and be like, okay, all of this on this side, there's nothing I can do. And if there is something that you find like, okay, I can't do this, but I could do this, add it to your list. But you have to step back and go, this is out of my control. I cannot use my brain to focus on this anymore, but this is where I can put my time, my energy, and this is where I can focus. And if even if there's things that you think you can't control and you send this to your coach, amazing. Maybe your coach will be like, well, time out. They could challenge you. They could be like, do you think we could control this in this way? What do you think about this? So I can control, really powerful. So step one, goal that brings up self-doubt, what you can and cannot control. And then we want to list out past examples of evidence from your life that of challenges you've overcome. So this could be like, if you've had a baby, women, please just put your kids' names down, all of them. But literally, if you've had a baby, I don't care, C-section, vaginal, both, you have endured a great stress and almost trauma. I consider it a trauma to your body, in the best possible way. I don't mean that in a bad way. Just like your body is experiencing this mass pain, this mass change, this mass, getting a human life out of your body is insane. What your body does to get it out. But that is an example of a challenge you have lived through and overcome. Even parenting children challenges you've overcome. It could be things that you've done at work, things that you've done when you were a kid, things that you have done even on your journey in this program. List out any and all examples of accomplishments, of challenges, of things that you have overcome to be like, yes, I can pull from this. And this could be something that you just continue to add to. And like I said, if you have a journal, like keep this page like handy at the front, because when you're having a hard day, like I have one in my like the notes section of my phone. I love it when I'm having a hard day. I have one for wins. I have one for like when I just need that reminder, like because when we're in our emotional brain, we're not going to be thinking clearly. So I can easily start to look at my list and be like, yeah, I do hard things all the time. That's one of our family mottos. Beckers do hard things. So it's like these challenges, write them all down. It doesn't have to feel, sometimes people feel like it has to be this like monumental thing. It's like, no, like binge eating, overcoming binge eating for me, stepping on stage, right? Learning how to pose, like simple things that could seem like, losing this much weight, like you've done it and you've maintained it. Like these are things, write them down. Now, this is where we can start looking for, like, this is where we get to use our brain, all those parts of our brain that we were like, how can we use this to help us? This is where we can look for the challenges. Your amygdala, right, is going to be like, well, hey, this challenge, this is going to pop up. This is going to pop up. This. Cool. Cool. We know obstacles are going to happen on this journey. There's no journey that's just a smooth sea. Smooth sea doesn't make a skilled sailor, right? I don't care who you are. We all know this. You're not going to get better by doing the same thing. So challenges are part of this. They're an opportunity. Challenge, how could we potentially navigate this challenge? And this is where, like, again, work with your coach because they can, I'm sorry, I'm clicking. Work with your coach because they can truly help think of other ideas. And that doesn't mean you don't have beautiful ideas. It's like, how about we get all of these different ideas on the table? So if we find this one doesn't work, or it's not like, yeah, this wasn't the best one, we have other ones we can pull from. And it's right here in front of our face, right? We already know this challenge is going to happen. Boom. This is how I can pivot. This is how I can navigate. And this is how I can learn and move through it, right? Because we have to seek that challenge and push through it. Like I said earlier, you have to do the behavior to believe. We have to do it. So, doing, this would be the doing. This would be like that challenge. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to challenge your beliefs. And I could have done this a couple different ways. Um, but I love a catch, challenge, change, or this is so beautiful too. But we are being aware of that thought, right? This one that this thought around our goal where you're like, hey, I'm doubting, I'm thinking X, Y, and Z, right? This is the thought that's popping up. What happens is sometimes we believe a thought, just like I said earlier, because we just had this thought. We're like, well, it's 100% true. It has to be true because I thought it. And it's like, no, right? Just because a thought pops into our brain doesn't mean it's all the way true, right? And even if there's a 1% piece of doubt to that truth of that thought, it automatically makes that thought not 100% believable. So what it is, it's like, is this thought 100% true or valid? And what I like to do is be like, okay, what we can kind of go to the next question is like, what evidence do I actually have for this belief, right? What is my evidence for this belief? So you're probably like, well, I've done this before. I failed before. I've had this happen. This is where your brain's automatically going to go on that like negative loop, right? That circuit. It's like, here we go. I'll find out you all the evidence to prove that this thought is true. That's what your brain does. So you have to start challenging your brain. So it could be like, what evidence do I have against this belief? This one's going to be hard. This one, get your coach involved because they are going to be able to see things and even like things you guys have worked through in the past that can challenge this. Example. I am a binge eater. I could do this one. When I was binging, not now, but I am a binge eater, right? That could be the thought that I believe. I'm just like, this is who I am. This is my identity. This is what I do. Evidence. I'm binging on Reese's, a bag of Reese's every night. I eat every single Reese's. Like I'm doing it all the time. I'm restricting during the day. What evidence do I have against this? I've left Reese's in the bag, right? I haven't binged in 2 days. Like, so I'm not always a binger, right? I actually have noticed that by increasing my food, I'm noticing I'm not binging as much. I know, like, I have evidence of myself being really proud when I don't binge. Like, boom, I've got evidence, right? And as you get better at it, you'll start being able to find it more and more. This is going to feel like sometimes you're like, I have nothing. You have something. You have something. And if you don't have anything, you go to your coach. I'm going to say it again, go to your coach because they will have evidence. And then what that can do is it proves that that thought is not 100% true. So there's doubt to that thought. There's not self-doubt. There's just like, ooh, this thought isn't actually all the way true. There is some great, we're not black or white here. There's obviously this wiggle room where there's a little bit of both, right? Nothing is all or nothing. Not everything is. So something that you can say is like, what would a friend say, or maybe even your husband or, your partner say in this situation? It's like, what would they say to you? What would they say to you? And then something I love to do, which sounds weird, in what ways am I like winning by keeping my belief, right? How am I staying safe? How is that working for me to keep this belief, right? And that sounds crazy, but sometimes it's like, because then I have to actually change, right? If I'm doing this, then I don't have to change. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to feel uncomfortable. I don't have to do X, Y, and Z. If I look at this belief as positive, right? If I'm like, how is it different if I look at this and go, but how, if I don't believe this thought, right? Basically, if I don't believe this thought, how does that help me win? Right? How is that leading me into this future belief of self? And so, that is really positive because understanding why you want to stay the same or stay in your cozy zone is powerful. Knowing why you want to get out of that cozy zone, also powerful, right? Because it's like, there's a purpose and a reason here. Now, this is a little beefier, but I do this because this is how we can start, those pathways in our brains, right? What we say, what we do, what we think. That's the repetition. That's the patterns that we are creating in our brain. So in order to make new thought patterns, we have to start kind of changing these thoughts. All right. This is how we rewire our brain right here. This is how we do it. And it doesn't happen like this. I'm sure you know by now. We can't Amazon Prime this, but what we can do is one, we most things happen like this. There is a circumstance, right? We have a thought, right? Something happens, neutral. We have a thought that we create, usually negative, that creates an emotion. That emotion dictates what you do. And then what you do dictates your results. I know in past ones we've done, like actions audit. This is what my actions are. This is what the result is yielding. Well, this goes a little deeper, right? Because that like leads us to the half of this, the actions and the results. But this is going back to where it's stemming from, right? Because we can find patterns. We can find trends with emotions. I actually had conversations with a couple of clients today about this as well, of like finding patterns through their day of what was happening. But circumstance. So what actually happened? It could be like, I forgot my lunch, right? Very neutral statement, right? And all of us are like, no, no, right? But that could be the circumstance. Like there's no negative or positive. It's just what happened. Fact, right? I forgot my lunch. Sentence running through your mind. What are you thinking about this? Well, now I'm going to be off plan, right? Well, now my day is ruined, right? Maybe that's the thought. Now, other people, if they've like shifted thoughts over time, they might be like, no, actually, okay, this is figure outable. That's actually what I would be like. I'm like, okay, I'm a little frustrated, but this is figure outable. Feelings, a one word emotion about how you feel. How do I feel when I think about that thought? Well, if you said my day is ruined, now it's like, I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I'm like devastated. Like put in the word that makes the most sense to you. And then it's like, okay, what do you do or you don't do with that emotion, right? So what do you do or what do you avoid doing when you're feeling that way? So it might be like, okay, well, I'm going to order like Mexican food with the gals at work and I'm just going to get whatever I want. Just going to do the whole shindig. Or it might be like, you know what? I'm going to make the best possible option when I do this, right? Maybe I'm choosing the option that like, I'm like, hey, this is going to probably fit. Oh, Teddy, stop, please. This is going to fit my plan the best, and I'm going to make the most out of this and pivot as best as possible. So when that happens, thoughts are going to start, like results are going to come, right? If my day is ruined, I'm frustrated, I order everything on the menu, and then the next day I've got shame and guilt and I don't feel good. And now I'm starting to compare myself. And now I'm thinking about like, I need to restrict my calories, right? Everything leads into each other. This thought, it's the circumstance that creates whatever thought we think. And just because we think it, like I said earlier, it doesn't mean it's true. So we have to be able to see, hey, this might be a loop I'm in with this new thing I want to do, right? I have some self-doubt here with this goal. And every time I do it, this is what happens, right? Now you're like, okay, well, cool. Now I have awareness, right? This is awareness. Now, how to reframe. Is there another way we could look at this thought, right? Because a lot of times we're like, why is this happening to me? We kind of focus on that and it's like, we can't control that. It's like, what am I going to do about it? So switch the why to the what. What am I going to do about this? Um, is there another way I could look at this? What also could be true here? Or even more true, right? It's like, okay, like, you know, like the example of the food, right? I forgot my lunch. It's like, hey, I'm human, right? My day isn't ruined. I'm going to make the next best choice. I have control over where I go. I have control over where I eat. I have control, right? How does that new thought make you feel? Okay, I feel calm because I know I trust myself to pivot. It could be like, my day is going to be more challenging, but I have the opportunity to rise to this challenge. It's going to be a hard day, but I also am able to allow some room to be flexible and adapt because we're human. We're going to have to learn that. And then what would you do from that emotion? How would you show up if you believed that? Like, if you really believe that, do you believe that? Because if you don't believe this new thought, this reframe, then your brain is going to automatically like default and go away from it. I promise you it will. The more you can get a believable thought, the more your brain's going to work with you. Because if it's believable, the brain will be like, yes, yes, okay, okay, yeah, I could see that. If you don't believe it, your brain will immediately go back to the negative even harder. Very real. A prime example of old old Sierra, old Eeyore Sierra, where she was like, I just hate myself. I couldn't just go to the super positive and be like, I love myself because my brain immediately was like, silly goose, no, you don't. Back to the hard, right? Back to this even harder. So I had to go somewhere neutral. I love neutral thoughts. I love neutral reframes as much as possible. Where there's no super positive, no super negative. It's just like right in the middle. I had to go with I am Sierra. I am Sierra. Because my brain couldn't fight it. My brain was like, yeah, you are. You sure are. So anytime that thought popped in of like, oh, I hate myself, or like, ugh, Sierra, it was like, no, no, I don't hate myself. I am Sierra, period. And that was the thought. I had to start training my brain to to create that new dirt path, right? I had to start by catching it and being like, no, this is the new thought. No, no, I don't hate myself. I am Sierra, right? This is it. And then it started to shift. That thought didn't stay for forever because I do love myself and I'm very proud of me. And I have lots of things that I'm, in that space of, but you have to kind of grow with the thought to allow it to kind of blossom, like sprout and then bloom. So what result might you create instead? What becomes possible if you shift that old thought to this new reframe, right? What are the possibilities that come? What is that going to provide for you, your life, all of this? And so you can write this down, like you can use like either or as like a sentence starter. So it's like, my new belief is, or you could use, I chose to act from this because I am becoming blah, 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 XYZ. Um, what this does is allow you to take a minute. And that's the hard part. I know this takes time, but here's the thing. If we don't take the time, we're just going to stay stuck in our loops. We're going to stay stuck. And this is where self-belief starts to grow, is where you can shift that doubt and we don't let it stop us. We just acknowledge it as like a thing that is part of what is going to be in our journeys. Like doubt is going to come, but we don't allow it to stop us. It allows us to say, hey, this is telling me something. It's sending me messengers that I have some doubt, that there are thoughts that are not serving me. And there is a way that I can work through these. And like I said, work with your coach because they're going to be able to help with the reframe. And you may not need to do all of the questions, but sometimes it can be so powerful to sit down and journal. And people are like, I don't know what to journal about. Well, here's a very guided, like we could do a totally different journaling one, but this is like so guided and so beneficial of like, this is who I want to become. This is the goal I want to achieve. Well, let's do it. Like I fully believe in every single one of our clients that they can do it. And if you don't believe it, take and use your coach's belief in you because I have no doubt that every single coach here believes you can do it. No doubt. It's just lean on somebody else and like use that to go, hey, if Sierra can overcome binge eating, I can freaking do this. If Sierra can lose, and I'm using myself, but like you can be like, if, that girl I just saw on Instagram lost that many pounds, so can I. She's not anything special or magical. She just had moved through that self-doubt to self-belief. Anyway, then you can always do like a check-in with yourself. Um, about your belief that you had before and after and how you're feeling. So it could just be like a really great, again, pattern tool for you to be like, whoa, I have a big, like, especially like here, like, I really have a struggle or a pattern with fear of judgment. I really let other people dictate what I do and how I show up. Or I really, like, every single time one of these things I do, it has to do with my past failures. Or maybe it's, I'm always comparing myself, right? It allows us to see where these are coming from and potentially things that we may need to like keep working on too. But it's like, how strongly do you believe this thought before the reframe? So that was like your original thought. Maybe you were like a level 10. And then after we reframed, maybe you're at like a level 5 or a 4. So you can start seeing like, wow, this reframe is actually shifting how I feel, the energy in my body, and it is helping me move in a positive direction, right? Because that thought of self-doubt is not serving you. It doesn't mean we're not going to have it. It's just how we let it choose to move us or stop us. Um, and then, like I said, this helps connect patterns and really starts to bring unconscious behaviors to the present. An affirmation anchor. I know sometimes people are like, oh, affirmations are so woo-woo. But they're actually very real. When you write them, especially when you write them and say them on a daily practice, like something I do every morning is I make a gratitude list and I write down, I call them belief goals, but they're basically affirmations. I just call them belief goals because that's like something I'm working to like believe and grow in. And it's like we can create this and really like put it out there and like re-say it because it really does start to, again, what we repeat, what we say, what we think, it does start creating that path in our brain and we rewire that. Same with like the thoughts that we're like trying to reframe, we have to catch that old thought and be aware of it to start being like, no, no, no. My, like, I used to call myself an idiot, which and every once in a while I notice I'll do it and immediately I'm like, no, I'm human. That's like my reframe. I'm not an idiot. I am human. I get to make mistakes. Literally what I say to myself, I am human. I get to make mistakes. All right, how are we problem solving through this? Pep talks of Sierra. But when you have that and you have something that you're constantly putting out there, writing, saying, it's getting ingrained in here. And that helps shift the self-belief and helps bring that self-doubt and lowers it. Sorry. And then I know visualization is so powerful, but your brain does not know the difference between something that you've seen and actually done and something that you visualize. So if you visualize it, it can be such a powerhouse because you are able to really start seeing that, like seeing yourself doing things and acting a certain way. And, you can be like, how do you feel? How do you act? How do you show up? Like, get as nitty gritty and specific as possible. The more specific, the more detail, the better. The brain, like I said, big emotions even bring it because the brain loves to remember that. And then you can always keep this. Like I said, I write mine down in a journal every day. You can do it on your notes section. You can do it in your planner. I just like, I am a big journaler, so I like to journal, but you could write a little sticky note and put it like in your planner or like, on your computer screen that you just have like constant see, constant repetition of, because the more you see it, again, the repetition, the more you see it, say it, think it, the more you are going to start ingraining that into your brain and you'll start looking for those things more and more and more. So self-belief, we've worked up the pyramid. We're not all the way there. I do think I want to finish the pyramid if everybody's cool with that. But if somebody has anything that they want us to do, I of course want to put that first. Um, but I felt like, we've kind of gone up this pyramid and the last one is self-trust. So I'm thinking we go do that one. And then, of course, I can put that off for later. We don't have to do them in order. But if there is something that you are truly wanting us to like dive in on here, like feel free to, I'll post a couple things below. I'll post the PowerPoint, I'll post this work or like toolkit is what I'm calling it. And then I will also post like the Google Doc. There's some things on there for sure. And we can hit that. And if you have anything you want to add, or if there's anything just pressing, you can just type it under here. Or if you have questions, thoughts, comments, things that you want to like as I've been talking, you're like, actually I have more questions about this, bring it. Because I love us to continue this conversation and just keep diving in because like I said, if we do not have self-belief, then our actions will follow. And anytime we are struggling with that self-doubt and we notice self-sabotage, there's something here, right? And it's always so beautiful. Get your coach involved. The more you share, I know it can feel vulnerable, but know that we're here to like we've all had self-doubt, like every single one of us, and every single one of us has overcome it time and time again. So, anywho, thanks for being here. And if you have anything, drop it below. We'll see you next time.